When you're new to gardening, it can be really easy to totally go overboard and not really think about the future. So in today's video, I want to cover some of the big high maintenance mistakes that I see home gardeners make and how you can prevent that before you even get started by thinking about the maintenance levels of things before you put them in. My name is Amy, and over at prettypurpledoor.com, I help home gardeners design landscapes that are uniquely you. Mistake number 7 is, you guessed it, a lack of planning. This is really key when you're trying to create a low maintenance landscape because you have to think about every decision that you make in terms of how much time is this going to take for me to maintain and upkeep. So first of all, try to put in all of the larger elements of your landscape first, like patios and walkways and larger structures and things like that, because if you start planting and then you want to put in a patio later, it's going to ruin all of your planting because it's going to get trampled or ruined during the construction. So that's something that can save you a lot of time and effort. Another thing to consider when planning for maintenance or a low maintenance landscape is how much time things are actually going to take and how much time you have to give to your garden. So I have an entire video about a low maintenance landscape and you can watch that. I'll leave a link up here and in the description below. That's a great one to watch next. But basically, larger trees and shrubs are very low maintenance, whereas if you're choosing annuals, they're like the highest maintenance, followed by perennials and flowering things because they need like the fertilizer, they're going to need the pruning, they're going to need the deadheading, they're going to need the dividing and all of that. So incorporating a lot more larger trees and larger shrubs into your landscape ultimately makes it low maintenance, but just make sure you're thinking about that, about how much time that you have to dedicate to your landscape, and think about maybe 10 years down the road how much time you feel like you're going to have and plan for that instead of planning for all the excitement that you're feeling right now. Because if you have a landscape that you can't maintain, it's just going to be another thing on your list instead of an enjoyable hobby for you to have. Mistake number 6 is actually using too many curves in your design. And while curves are beautiful, and I'm not saying don't use any curves, using a lot of intricate or swirly curves in your landscape just makes it really hard to maintain. You're going to have to do a lot of edging, a lot of cleaning up. It's going to be harder to mow. So I recommend if you want to use curves, use really bold curves. Just be confident with those choices and don't be doing like a little wiggly, squiggly thing. I don't know how else to describe it, but the more curves that you have, the higher maintenance it's going to be in the long run. Not that you need no curves at all, but just keep yourself in check with all the curves that you're putting in. Mistake number 5 is selecting the wrong tree, or specifically trees that are too big. So I always recommend if you find a tree that you really want to put in your landscape, plot it out in your property. Find the mature size of that tree and then draw a big circle or use a piece of rope just to see how large that tree is going to be at its maturity. You may find that it's going to end up being a lot larger than you think, and it's going to create extra maintenance later. You're either going to have to take it out and hire somebody, and that could be very expensive, or you're going to have to do a lot of pruning, or your neighbors are going to get mad if it's going over the edge of your property. So make sure that you're choosing the right tree for your space. If you want shade, make sure you're putting it in the location where you need that shade. Make sure that if you have a vegetable garden or somewhere that needs a lot of light, like a pool area, that the tree isn't going to impede on the sun getting to that area. So there's a lot of considerations. Trees are absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend choosing one or even more really nice trees for your landscape, but they are a big decision and a long-term decision. So definitely do that research to make sure that the tree that you're choosing is right for what you need. But again, trees are great. Put them in first and do the most research on those trees because they're the hardest to fix later when you make that mistake. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd highly recommend you check out my 3 garden design secrets training. It's a free 1-hour-long training. All you have to do is sign up. I'll leave the link in the description below. I'm going to cover the top 3 mistakes I see home gardeners make and how to remedy those. I'm also going to cover a little bit more about my Design Your 4-Season Garden course. If that's something that may interest you, you're going to love it, and I hope to see you over in that training. Link in the description. What mistake are we on? Mistake number 4 is not using enough shrubs and larger plants in your design. I touched on this a little bit before, but creating a backbone structure of larger evergreens or larger shrubs is really going to cut down so much on your maintenance. Like, you have no idea. I hear it in the comments all the time, people commenting saying, I'm like now getting older and I'm changing to swap out a lot of my perennials for larger flowering shrubs and things like that. But the truth is is that they don't need nearly as much maintenance as the perennial flowering plants and annuals do. So if you want to start out with a low maintenance landscape, definitely put in more shrubs and just create that beautiful structure. And you won't have to do as much pruning and deadheading and maintaining as you would if you had all flowers. And my other tip that kind of goes along with this is if you do want a lot of perennials or you love the flowers and you still want a garden, I'd recommend putting those in an area that's not as visible, at least from like maybe the front of your house. So make a flower garden on the side of your house or in your backyard. And that way, if you get behind on the maintenance, it's not going to be as visible from the front and you're not going to get stressed out having to go out and maintain that so much. So in the front yard, especially, choose a lot more larger shrubs and larger plants that don't need that maintenance that perennials will need, and you'll be off to a great start for a low maintenance, beautiful landscape. Mistake number 3 is incorrect plant placement, or basically not putting the right plant in the right place. This can cause a lot of problems. I think especially people who are planting things like hostas, they don't realize that they need quite a bit of water. So if you're looking for low maintenance plants, make sure that they're matching the conditions you have. Make sure that you put those hostas in a shady area that gets a lot of moisture, has wet soil, and make sure that you're choosing drought tolerant plants for areas that aren't getting a lot of supplemental water. If there are plants that you just really, really love and you know that you're going to have to give them supplemental water or things like that, try grouping them all together in one area. That way you can spend your time watering that one specific area instead of having them scattered all over your landscape. That'll really help a lot. But overall, it's just putting the right plant in the right place and thinking about the maintenance needs of those plants and making sure they have everything they need where they are so that you don't have to intervene as much. And native plants are a great choice for this typically because they are native and grow in the wild in the area where you live. So if you look up native plant choices in the state or the region that you're in, most of those will be pretty low maintenance in general, and they're a great option if you want a low maintenance landscape. Native plants all the way. Mistake number 2 is having too much clutter in your landscape. So I know like garden tchotchkes are fun and adding garden art and all of these different things to your landscape is really great, but it actually does create quite a bit more maintenance. So some things I would suggest is if you're going to use garden art, you can nestle those pieces of art into existing garden beds so you don't have to move them when you have to do maintenance to your lawn and things like that. If you have a bird bath and you enjoy feeding the birds, make sure you're putting the bird feeder and the bird bath in a place where you're near the water or you're near the bird seed so you don't have to keep going back and forth so much. Just thinking about these things ahead of time can really cut down on quite a bit of maintenance. Another thing is making sure that your plants aren't going to overgrow the garden bed that they're in, and then you have to go through and hand trim or prune all of those plants before you cut your grass. Make sure that your patio furniture will fit on your patio and it's not spilling out into the lawn so that you have to go through and move all of those things before you mow the lawn. Mine is my dog's toys. They're always everywhere. So every time that we have to mow the grass, we have to go through and just pick up all of these little toys that she sneaks out from the inside and make sure that they're out of the way so that we can mow the lawn. Not a big problem. I love my dog. I don't mind doing that kind of maintenance, but if you're shooting for a low maintenance landscape, just think about these things ahead of time. And it doesn't mean that you can't have any garden art. It doesn't mean that you can't have a bird bath, but there are ways to incorporate those into your landscape a little better so that it's not as high maintenance when you have to maintain the grass and other things in your landscape. And mistake number 1 for a high maintenance versus a low maintenance landscape is not using garden edging. So there's tons of different types of garden edging you can pick from, whether it's brick or steel or something else that's decorative, or just simply cutting an edge into your garden bed, like in the dirt with a half moon edger. There's so many options out there, but I highly recommend you have some kind of edging. Edging works in 2 ways. Number 1, it keeps your plants inside of the garden bed so that they're not encroaching on the lawn and getting in the way when you have to cut your grass. Number 2, it keeps the grass and the weeds that might be in your yard from encroaching on your garden bed. So it's really important to keep those 2 separate so that you have a nice, easy to maintain and easy to keep up with landscape. My favorite edging personally is using brick. I use brick edging in a soldier course all around my garden beds, and I love that because it separates it from the lawn, but I can also put put the lawnmower onto the brick edging and it's flat, so I don't need to do any additional weed whacking or anything to keep my lawn looking nice. It's just really simple and I love the way it looks. So leave a comment below. Let me know what kind of edging you like to use. I'd love to hear from you. And I have so many other mistakes videos on this channel. I'm going to leave a link to a playlist of them right here, and I'll see you over in the next video.